Did you just hear Ralph there?
Ta-da! Hello, everybody. Hi out there, and welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. I am a historical fiction author and an eclectic reader. You're on Booktube. How's it feel? Booktube, Gareth.
Booktube.
Feels pretty normal. This guy puts a video out like every day. He's an old hand. Yeah. Excellent.
I do put a lot out. Yeah.
Yes.
I put it out there.
Lots of different topics, lots of different series, all types of things. It's great. So welcome to Agitation August for this 21st day of the month. And where every weekday of August, we're talking about a certain book with a certain person. And today we have a specific book, but I think we'll sort of roam around to various other books and thinkers. It's The Making of the English Working Class by E.P. Thompson, a 20th century classic. Another 20th century classic, like myself, is Gareth from Book Songs Magic. So welcome, Gareth. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your channel and the things that you like to talk about over there so people know to subscribe?
Thanks, Margaret. So it's called Book Songs and Other Magic because I cover a few different things. It's mostly books. I try and make sure that most of the videos are books because that is what I want. But I'm also a musician and a music teacher, and I like to put the songs and music in there as well. And the other magic is just it gives me freedom to do whatever I want. So I can do I do some political things, and I've done some meaning your life kind of things, you know, what matters in life, and you know, make an everyday count kind of videos and feel good about yourself, that kind of thing. And movies and TV and stuff as well now and again.
Comics.
So, comics, yeah. I've done a bit of that as well, yeah.
Yes, and all sorts of genres, which is great. So eclectic reader. I think we have another eclectic reader on the channel. So if you haven't come to this series before, and this is your first time, because I know Gareth has a great audience and you may have come over here from his channel, there's a playlist down in the description to tell you all the folks that have come and talked about the books that shook them up. But Gareth, why don't you tell us, why did you choose this book? I know it was hard to make a decision because there's a lot of books on history and what you studied at school. So why did you say yes to this?
So I thought it would be a good idea to pick something that I did in my degree because I studied history, and it was a social history degree, and all of my lecturers were left wing, and it was a very political degree. So I thought it would be interesting to look at that. So this is such a seminal work. It's such an important work. It's huge, and it covers so many different areas, and the idea of what the working class was in England in this period is really important because it's a bit more black and white than it is nowadays, which we'll get to later. And it's important to start from there so that, you know, because, you know, it's not that long after Marx was writing, and there's so much going on in the country. You know, industrialization changed everything.
Yes.
You know, so some things are actually relatable to before that in the serfdom, you know, times, and you know, the feudal system and stuff. You know, there were issues there, and you know, some of that carries forward to this period. But this is such a good example of looking at a political angle of English history in a really complete way. You know, it's an amazing book. So I thought that was be a good one to pick.
And I will say, America definitely has its issues, but I think it's wonderful that the dubious distinction of getting picked by Engels for problems of the 19th century was England. so that was a fun one too. We've got loads of people here to say hi to, so I'll just slide in here to say hello to some of our friends in the chat. We've got Aaron.
Out.
I'm guessing that's Maggie Thatcher. Yeah,
that's Maggie Thatcher. Yeah.
We've got Elaine, very surprised and impressed. I'm sure you're on time. Diana's on time. Excellent. Greg is here to say, I have a master's degree in American history, focusing on the agrarian working class in the late 19th.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, so populism and the wheat and the processing. I got really into that for a novel that is in the drawer. So that's pretty fascinating. may or may not be able. Oh, I'm sure you'll be able to add to discussion. That's great.
There are definitely going to be parallels, because one of the things, obviously, we're kind of known. This country is known for its class issues, but I do think that most developed countries have got an issue with have and have-nots.
Yeah.
So it may not be as obvious as having been labelled as upper class or lower class or whatever, but America's got a class system. They just don't call it upper class and working class.
I think we did have this myth in like lower school about, Britain has a class system and America was the great land of opportunity where you could make anything of yourself. And I think I was probably junior year of high school, so about 15, 16 when that started to be deconstructed and sort of picked apart. But it's it's a very uneven pyramid, let's say. The pyramid is very wide at the bottom and very tiny at the pointy top.
And that's capitalism, That's
right.
America and several centuries of England has developed through capitalism, and that means there's going to be a huge divide because it doesn't work.
Right. You've got labor and you've got capital and owners of capital. So for sure. Yeah. One of the things I was just looking up, because I remember reading E.P. Thompson, but also hearing about Dorothy Thompson, and I just looked up. Dorothy was his wife, and it's dedicated to her and some other person who I'm guessing is a child. So I was interested because she talks about Chartism, and that was another one we were like, oh, should we do Chartism?
Yeah. It's just there's not a really obvious book about it, is it? But it's such an interesting moment.
Yeah. What a power couple, right?
Yeah.
Political, economic history power couple in their day.
Yeah, I was kind of getting in the mood for this by watching some footage of E.P. Thompson being interviewed as well.
Really?
And, cool. So there's YouTube footage of him being interviewed. So as an old man, there's if you really look hard enough, you can find some Eric Hobsbawm as well. And I noticed the Christopher Hill one as well. They're the three famous Marxist historians, English Marxist historians. And the three of, I don't know if I told you this, but the three of them were what I did my dissertation on in my degree.
I don't think I have Christopher Hill in my memory, but it could be just because I didn't know him before, so it didn't lodge in there well enough. But yeah.
Well, Christopher Hill, his specialism was the Civil War. So, and I'm really into the Civil War.
Okay.
Our Civil War.
Your Civil War, yeah.
Yeah, not the American Civil War.
We didn't know there was one until college. It's very weird how they cover history here. So
everyone's had a Civil War.
Yes. So I want to mention and highlight for folks that we are playing for keeps, meaning books, gift cards of books. We're playing bingo. So if you have watched the shows up till now and are listening for people's words, they're on the bingo cards. You can write them down. I think we've had 2 bingos so far. And there's a 25, there's a 50, and there's a 75. And they work in the UK and the US for Bookshop. And we'll figure something out if you're in a different place. So my Scout's honor on that. So I would love for you guys to play and go out and support all the people, different people in the playlist. Gareth's word was a little bit more of a concept, and so it's not on the bingo board, but class consciousness. All right, so let's dive in with that. That's the last section of the book, and I have to admit, I've read the first half and I skimmed the second half when you chose the book, because it's 800 pages. I'm not going to get through it, but class consciousness is the last section. And how did you first come to understand the concept, and has that changed on rereading or since having read it for your degree? Because I bet that was a little bit ago.
Okay, so class consciousness, I was already aware of the concept and the ideas behind it and how it was formed because of my A-levels. So I've discovered this book in my degree, but I've done A-levels, so I don't know if you know the system over here, but A-levels is
A-levels and O-levels, but I think they're to get into university.
Yeah.
Okay.
So A-levels is 16 to 18-year-olds.
Okay.
So I studied history then, and I studied drama. Yeah, and when I did drama, I studied a lot of politics when I was doing that, and so class consciousness was something that I was kind of aware of, and it kind of informs a lot of the stuff that is kind of looking back at these kind of periods. So it was the question, how do I understand it?
Yeah, How did you first come to understand it, and has it changed your understanding of it since that period when you were studying it?
Well, class consciousness is the working class being self-aware of them being a class and being a unified unit, and that has massively changed over the years, which we'll get into that later. But certainly in that period, it becomes really important because it ends up driving some of the protests and some of the riots and some of the agitation, to use the A word. And it also creates some other kind of splits in ideology as well. And you know, things like the Methodists as well are being very deliberate about having this form of Christianity that's about doing something in the community rather than just, you know, waiting for God to solve it all the time, sort of thing. And that's definitely something about being sort of aware of what's around you and being sort of not necessarily class conscious for the Methodists, but certainly conscious of social awareness. Yeah. So I think that's really important in all of this, you know.
You bring in religion right away, which makes me think of the research I was doing so Chartism is like the end of the series that I'm working on. I've done book 1. I'm working on book 2. It's sort of on the shelf right now. And I was trying to do a lot of research as to what preceded Chartism. And there was a lot of non-solidarity. There was not the class consciousness in that period yet in the 1830s. There were people over here writing. There were people over there striking. There were people over here refusing to pay a tax, but they hadn't gotten together. And one of the things that divided them was the religion. And, you know, well, these people have done this and these people go to that church. And so we can't possibly bond with them. So yeah, an easily divided cutting of the...
Yeah. Well, the thing, one of the really cool things about the Chartist movement was it did bring people together. So the whole idea was to extend the franchise because up until that point, the vote was only landowners. So it was to make sort of ordinary men vote. And in reality, that also meant women getting a say because so much of the time it's very documented that the men didn't really have an opinion and their wives were going, you need to get the vote so I can vote who I want to vote. You know, so there's a bit of that going on as well. So it was a really important development, hugely important development. And Henry Hunt was the famous orator that went around the country bringing everyone together and sort of creating that kind of cause.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And you know, he was really important in giving people that idea of being a unified community, and that it was a problem they all shared, you know, something that they should all want to have the vote kind of thing, you know, and they're all going, oh yeah, actually, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, you know, because it was a fresh idea, because they thought it wasn't, you know, they before those kind of things are being said, you'd get people lashing out and rioting and protesting, but there wouldn't be that sense of, well, what can we actually do to change, you know, so yeah, it was more individualistic, like you said, you know, and not unified. Yeah, so
it's crazy when you read the descriptions of meetings that people like Henry Hunt spoke at. So there's no megaphones, there's no sound systems, and they had tens of thousands of people out in the countryside. Maybe it was in a nicely formed, you know, like ring of hills so that their voice would go out. But I'm like, how on earth are people listening to this person broadcasting? Like,
it was in towns as well, so there'd be people in alleyways and just like around the buildings, just like, what did he say? You know.
Passing it up the line or whatever. So I have
a bit in Life of Brian, but you speak up, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I think that brilliant. Sorry about the digression, but that brilliant line in Life of Brian is one of my favourite lines when he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and he says it, and then the guy at the back's like, "I think he said, blessed are the cheesemakers," you know, and it's like, no, I think you will find he meant all producers of dairy goods.
There you go. So one of the things that I don't think Americans might know is that the big push for the franchise started sort of around the Regency, just after the Regency period. And so 1832, you've got this big reform bill, and the big change that they're able to push through because they have more folks on the left is like a tiny little top layer of icing of the merchant class. And the reason some people voted for it and some people didn't was something about the Ireland issue. There was something in the bill before that was about disenfranchising Irish folks to get the English expansion. And so there's all these like weird things where you're horse trading in Parliament, and it was pretty fascinating to read. Very confusing, but fascinating as well.
Yeah, no, I find the Irish. I remember when I was doing the A level, and there was so much about the Irish problem, they called it, and Irish home rule and stuff like that, and the corn laws, and it gets very confusing. Or it was for me when I was studying it as a 16-year-old. But yeah, if you look at 17th and 18th century British history, there's loads about Ireland because it was a real, like a economic war, if you like.
Right, it's their first colony, basically, and so when you think how a nation or an empire treats its colonies, they're right next door, but they could have been the other side of the world in terms of how they treated them, like extraction and stuff.
Yeah, well, and there was so much racism against the Irish. One of the things that I found fascinating in that period was in the public parks all around the cities and in the towns and all that. There'd be signs with a picture of an Irish person, and it would say, "Beware of the Irish. They will steal your money. They'll beat you up." But it would be a picture of what an Irish person looks like. Is that called phenology? The idea of you can make so something like a certain race looks a certain way.
I think that's just racism. The phrenology
it's just racism. Like, that's true.
Map of your head, like you'd have a bump here, and you'd have like a larger like bottom of the skull, or that's phrenology.
Yeah. Like obviously we've moved on, but
right.
But that was kind of fascinating.
It was very popular around 1900, though.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Aaron says anybody who says their country doesn't have a class system is probably a middle class person, and or unaware. I would put on there. Yeah, it's probably pretty apt. Heidi's got a question. Have you guys read Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, the Meatpacking District in Chicago at the turn of the 20th century? I read it in high school. Very memorable. I think I read this around 2010 or 2012. It was like very stomach turning because it was Upton Sinclair is part of the muckraker journalists who were going in to make sunshine laws, basically. But instead of making laws, they were doing it through journalism. So they were showing, reporting on all the nefarious ideas of the bosses and how it was impacting the workers. And so the Meatpacking District is it's a pretty gross read, but like really powerful. Yeah, very memorable.
That's cool. I was thinking that maybe this is a good time to ask, because I'm assuming that people who are watching this might have an opinion. I was thinking about doing like a 6-part series on like landmark moments in sort of left history in Britain, because like it's something I feel very passionate about, but it's also something I wouldn't really want to do like, I don't know, like every decade of every century or something. But there's certain things that are quite fascinating, and I'd probably start with the Peasants' Revolt, probably. And that was obviously way back in the 14th century. And I love that kind of stuff because it's, there is a history of struggle, to quote Marx. There is a history of struggle. And people might think that, I don't know, they might just see a modern view of Britain and just say that's it. But it has such an interesting history through the centuries. So yeah, I don't know if anyone's interested in that. Let me know, and I'll do it next year. Are you thinking you
do like top 7 moments in leftist history, or the series of like this moment and then explain it, and that's one video?
Yeah, so it would be So it would be like 6 videos, or 7. If you're over, it'd be 7. I can do 7.
Well, whichever. 6. You said 6. Yeah, sorry.
We'll call it 8.
Heidi also said Bonfire of the Vanities, which I haven't read or seen. A book that spotlighted class difference in Manhattan, hitting very close to home.
Yeah, I've seen the film. Yeah.
Okay. I love the name. I love that name. Like it's so good. Sorry.
Tom.
It's on the tip of my tongue. I'll think of it. Yeah.
Tom. It's not Tom Wolfe, is it? No.
No, I think you're right. No.
Is it? No.
I think that might be right.
It might be similar.
I'm thinking Dick Wolf, but that's the creator of Law and Order. All right. Aaron says, when it comes to religion, the British left, the old saying that goes, the Labour Party owed more to Methodism than Marx. Interesting. So, right, what you were pointing to.
Yeah.
The
The Labour Party's had a real strange history. And I'm going to, I don't know, I'm going to try, when I try and answer the question about what working class is now, which has done my head in the last few days trying to figure out what the answer is.
Oh, yeah. You try to give us a definition, and if it helps, you can do it in opposition to middle class. Like, maybe that will help.
Yeah, that makes it harder.
Does it?
I can do it in opposition to upper class. But
Okay.
the middle class and the working class nowadays is a little bit more confused. But the Labour Party, oh God, what was I saying? I can't remember what I was going to say. But yeah, I mean, now and again, they've in their history, nice, thanks. They've done things that have been quite socialist, which is lovely. But in general, they haven't been. So, and obviously the Labour Party at the moment is definitely not. But you know, they've done some impressive things. But you know, that's what I was getting to. But the public don't like it when they do that. so the public aren't as left as the Labour Party would like to be in some ways. Your average guy in the street is not particularly left wing.
Your average Labour Party voter is not?
No. Your average person.
Voter. Okay.
Yeah, average voter. Yeah.
Interesting. So would you say, I know that there are parties that have gone defunct in English history, and there's parties that have like moved on the sort of spectrum in relation to each other, in relation to the platform. It's the same for American politics. And what's funny is here, like, we've had flip-flops for like which is considered the more conservative and the more liberal.
Right.
Republicans used to be the party of Lincoln in the 19th century, and so they're known for, you know, emancipation and Reconstruction. But then you get to the 21st century, and you're like, the Republicans aren't really that party. They sort of flopped because of the 60s and the Southern strategy and all this other stuff. But it's like, it's weird to think like the Democrats used to be the Southern party and the Republicans used to be Southerners, and now it's like,
well, and in this country, obviously, for decades and decades, it's kind of been, even though there's many parties, it's been like a two-party race.
Right.
But a lot of people, if they didn't know much about history, wouldn't realise that the Liberal Party is older than the Labour Party. The Labour Party is relatively young because it was the Liberal Party that were against the Conservative Party during the 19th century, and you know, they've obviously been reshaped and reformed for modern times. But you know, the Labour Party is a relatively young party. You know, I mean, not as young as the Green Party, but you know. Yeah.
Thank you for saying Green Party on this stream. I love it.
The Green Party is funny because the Green Party, always, by the way, always gets voted in Brighton. I don't know if you know that, but the Green Party always gets voted in. They always vote for the Green Party in Brighton.
So why?
There's lots of hippies in Brighton.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like Berkeley. It's like an area where there's a lot of hippies. Okay, good to know. I did not know that.
Yeah. And that's partly why my son loves living there, because he loves the fact that he says, you know, this is the coolest place in the world. And to be fair, I've been impressed. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but I've been impressed with Portsmouth in the last little while. So in the last sort of 10 years, I thought it was quite a centre, maybe lean to the right kind of city, but it's not. So that was just me being too much on the left to give it any kind of credence. But there are some nice pockets of. I mean, when we went to Liverpool, it's really obvious how left-wing Liverpool is. As soon as you get there, it's funny how these different towns and cities have their personalities, and Liverpool is very obviously left-wing. You know, and you can really see that when you go there. But yeah, the Green Party would get a seat in Parliament if they changed the system so that it was proportional representation. But if they did that, the fascists would be in the House of Commons as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, So
you're like, you stay outside.
How democratic do you want your democracy?
So Lynn said, count me in. Aaron said, I'd certainly be interested in that series you're talking about, though I'd probably be arguing comments on each video. That'd be fun. That'd be fun.
Aaron, I think it was either Aaron or Gavin from Genre Books said a comment on something I said on one of my videos. It made me pause. I said I was going to do something, and then either Aaron or Gavin said something. I thought, oh, I should probably think about this a bit longer, because if that's the kind of comment I'm going to get, I need to make sure I've covered that kind of thing. So I mean, Aaron knows his stuff, so it'll be interesting.
So another thing he's saying, one of the reasons why the British Labour Party was founded later than most Western center-left parties is because the trade unions opposed it as counterproductive and were highly suspicious of socialism. Now this I haven't gotten into socialism in my readings for history, because I've only gone up to about 1845, 1847. So I haven't gotten into the influence of that.
I'm surprised that he's saying that the trade unions were suspicious of socialism. That is interesting. I'm not going to say that's not true, but that's new to me, I think.
I've got a lot of the beginnings of the movement, which we're talking about the corresponding society and all that kind of stuff, which is really fun. You're just thinking, oh, what you could do is the same as what my mom does now, which is write an angry letter. Okay, so speaking of an angry letter and what will get us involved in the system, as a young teenager, how did this political economy come alive for you? Was there like a teacher, or was there an issue? Was there something that made you jump into learning this topic?
Okay, so I would say I was absolutely ready for it, because even before I knew that I had that perspective on life, I had that perspective on life. So, you know, one of the stories that I really loved as a kid, that I've always loved ever since, is the Robin Hood story.
Yes. Yeah. I knew it.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and I've strongly believed that Robin Hoods existed. So it could have been Robin of Locksley, it could have been Robert of Huntington, or it could have been somebody else. Yeah. Because the earliest example of Robin Hood in history, actual primary sources, are songs. So they could have just called him Robin, just because they wanted a name. But there was definitely people, I think, that did what he did. Yeah. And I think that's amazing. And it's like direct action. You know, it's the system isn't right. You know, so we're going to literally just take your money and give it to someone else. And I remember, you know, I've always loved that kind of thing. So by the time I was studying it properly, like when I went to college when I was 16, history was first thing I wanted to put down with my options. And there's loads and loads of English history we did. And then when I did my degree, there was loads of English history in that as well. I did loads of Russian history as well, and did like witchcraft and stuff like that. Yeah. And East Germany as well. I did that. I did a unit on that. It was a really interesting degree. And I did the French Revolution, but the lecturer was a dick.
Was he French?
No, he wasn't French. No, it wasn't me being racist. It was just this guy that I'm gonna waffle about this for a moment, but he used to deliberately mark the students down by 10 marks because he thought it was cool or something. I'm not sure, but
it was like first.
It was just something like that. It was known in the uni, and I remember going to one of my lecturers that I got on well with, and I gave him an essay, and I said, "Can you read that and tell me if that's harshly marked?" Right. And he sort of looked at it and laughed. He went, "Yeah, that's David. You can't do anything about it." I was like, "What? So what would you have given it?" And he told me what he would have given it. I was like, "Well, there's nothing I can do about it." No. All right, cool. You know, and so the French Revolution stuff got my nerves a bit, because I thought, well, what's the point of me doing this? You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting degree. But yeah, I studied a lot of that sort of stuff, and a lot of it was like bottom up history. A lot of it was political stuff. And like uprisings, activism, agitation, all that sort of stuff. So that was, and I'd say the lecturers I had at uni were really, really inspiring. They were really. I mean, I had one guy who I was hoping, I probably still can have him on the channel, because I'm not doing the Historathon anymore. But when I sent him a message saying, would you be interested in a live stream where you can talk about race, and because that's his specialism, and the treatment of Jewish immigrants in Britain,
Hmm.
and he said he'd be up for it. This was like a year ago. So if I got into contact with him again, he might say yes to it again. He was a very cool lecturer, and those kind of people were really inspiring, definitely. Yeah.
Excellent.
God, sorry to Karen, but I did write some notes on this, and one of the things I said, which I thought would be a cool thing to mention, is that a lot of science fiction that I liked when I was a kid and a teenager was really political as well.
Of course.
So yeah, there's a series made with the budget and kind of some of the same departments as Doctor Who, called Blake 7. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-hmm.
But it was a political science fiction show. It was like they were trying to go against this sort of fascist system, but it was like science fiction, and I was well into that. I loved that when I was a kid. And then obviously in the 70s you've got Silent Running, and you've got Logan's Run, and stuff like that. So I was well into anything like that. I was really into as well, so from a science fiction point of view.
And I'm doing more of the fantasy, like I guess middle grader, young adult. When I was reading fantasy, it was more of the fairness and social progress and freedom kind of stuff. I'm thinking of Wrinkle in Time. So.
Yeah, but it's a way of putting those messages across in a subtle way for kids, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I do think that they are political, definitely. And I studied Brecht as well when I was a 16. Do you know much about Bertolt Brecht?
Oh, a tiny bit.
Yeah, so he really made me quite. He turned me from someone who was interested to someone who wanted to start a revolution.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
Nice. So a few more comments. Aaron says, for British political party chronology, the Tories have been around since the 1680s, became the Conservatives. Okay, so just rebrand in the 1830s. The Liberals formed in the 1850s and were overtaken by the Labour Party in 1922 as like the next big party. Gotcha. Thank you. William, hello. While they were not political parties in the strictest sense, the Conservative Party and Liberal Democrats are the parties that can trace their ancestry the furthest back in time. We've got two librarians here. Even though Pat is
1642 is interesting though, because 1642 was after the Civil War, when we'd got rid of Charles I.
Okay.
And Parliament was different then. Parliament had a lot more power, because that was the whole point. So when Charles II comes back and there's a restoration and there's a monarchy again, it's a very different monarchy. And it's interesting that these parties are forming at a time when Parliament matters, in a big way. Yeah.
Aaron says the British Trades Union movement really became socialist between 1900 and 1920.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense with the World War. Before 1900, the unions were led by men who were either drawing the Chartists, the Liberals, drawing on the Chartists, maybe were Liberals or Conservatives.
Yeah, but I think there's a sense that they were that the trade union movement was about better rights and better conditions for that particular kind of employment. Do you know what I mean? So there is a socialist element, even if they didn't give it that name. I do think that's a fair point to say. Aaron will go, no, it's not.
Tories are the direct successors to the Royalists, but the Whigs, who became Liberals, were a less direct successor to the Parliamentarians. Okay, so we're getting a little history semantics in the comments. I love it.
But yeah, the Whigs were the first name for the Liberals.
The Whigs really become a political force over the possibility of future James II becoming the heir in the early 1680s. And that's the first Jacobite rebellion period. That's how it comes on my radar as. So sorry, I've only got like my little slices into.
No, it's cool. You probably know more than a lot of Americans, definitely.
Definitely than a lot of Americans, because I'm interested. Yeah, because I'm interested.
Yeah.
Let's see. What about? So I went back, as I said, to read some of this, and there was a passage that was pretty interesting. It struck me about Luddism. So other people have probably heard the term Luddite, and not know that it comes from an apocryphal someone named Ned Ludd, who led an uprising and broke a bunch of knitting frame machines, I believe.
Yeah.
And the movement is called Luddism, to sort of punish the people who were trying to take labor away from the laborers and steal the crust of bread from their mouth, as Aaron will no doubt disagree with. How it was described, I thought was really interesting. So the author, E.P. Thompson, called it the end of paternalism. And have we improved is my question. So paternalism, I think, is what I would associate with what happened before the sort of class revolution, right? So you had a sort of social contract between the lords who had the land and ruled, and the peasants and serfs who worked the land and paid rent and fought in wars. And so you have this like supposedly mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, because
that broke down.
Yeah, but I think that broke down a number of times. There's so many different moments in history where there's a clash because that it's not working, and there's an uprising, or there's a moment like a very specific Luddite rebellion or something bigger, like going back to the Peasants' Revolt again. They were asking, their demands were so huge. They were asking for redistribution of wealth and land in a huge way, in a way that you just think, I can't believe that's the 14th century. So I think that E.P. Thompson maybe, he's writing a book about that period, so it doesn't make sense he would have made one statement about that one thing, but I do think that it's happening all the time, so it's not like an end of paternalism. Right.
Let's see. Today, for example, as a comparative structure, I don't think anyone in America would say we have a paternalist state and our government and our society. Everyone can just go F off as far as everyone else is concerned.
But you guys wear it with pride, though, don't you? Like, that's a principle of the American way, isn't it? To make it your own, the laissez-faire thing. No, but it is, though, isn't it? That's the American. What do you call it? The
bootstraps. Is that what you're gonna say?
No. I'm thinking about the American dream. The American dream is you can make it. You just gotta believe in yourself, and no one should get in your way. There shouldn't be any big government getting in your way of making money. That's what the American dream is, isn't it?
Well, I don't know what the percentage is. I don't do polls, but in terms of the American dream breaking down, I think a lot of people have realized that's a bunch of crap. So, but I don't think we ever had the notion of paternalism, because I think people coming here as settlers, as immigrants, were always about making your own way because they didn't have any state structure to depend on, right? But then
they didn't want it as well, right?
What's that?
Because they could have had, but they didn't want it as well. It's not just they didn't have it, but they didn't, just in principle, they didn't want big government. They didn't want any sort of nationalized industries or that kind of thing, did they?
Well, I think in the early 19th century, probably up to 1870s, that was about correct. They didn't, no, I've swapped that, sorry. Up until about the 1870s, I think people were not looking for it. It didn't exist. But when you start to have a movement where people are concentrated in industries and have sort of a self-awareness as an industrial workforce, as a urban society, those sorts of things start to contribute to people going, wait a minute, this isn't fair. We're not able to save anything and we're dropping in the streets, and you are in here constructing ballrooms, not to be time. There's something wrong here. Like, this is not fair.
There's a very strong labor movement, wasn't there, in that time as well in America?
Yes. So a little bit about what Greg was talking about, I've looked into, which was, it was the middle of the country, actually. It was the farmers who did the most amount of work organizing and realizing that when they sell their crop to the middlemen, and the middlemen profit off of it, and then they sell it to the merchants, and then the merchants profit off of it. Everyone is getting their cut and making themselves richer, except the actual commodity grower. And they're taking all the risk, and they're taking all the, the profits are being taken from their labor. And so they start to do farm bureaus, and they start to have like places where they can get together and talk. And then they start to try to do things like, well, we're all going to sell at this price, so if you don't like it, you're not going to get any product. So they're organizing. And it goes up to political movement. They have certain, William Jennings Bryan, they have certain people carrying the torch in the political arena, and they're great speakers, just like Hunt was. But ultimately, they're not the ones who are going to carry it in the urban centers, because they're not allied. So it sort of fell apart, and then it moved into the urban Labor Party equivalent, that were going to then carry the torch of like the 1900s, the 1910s, the reform and the laws that were going to actually be about safety and children out of, the workforce and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of like a beautiful dream crashing, and then another one comes in and does well for a while and then crashes, and then another one comes in and says, oh, well, we'll do it for these people. How about that? And it's imperfection, but it's like backwards and forwards as well. It's never as good as what we want. That's my opinion.
Yeah. But I get a sense that the land of opportunity, that kind of concept of America, comes from that laissez-faire kind of don't get in the way of business kind of principle. I don't know how old that is.
Doing it differently, like laissez-faire meaning don't have the state make rules or regulations about what person can do, what they can sell, how they pay their workers, etc. Whereas I think people who are trying to start a small business, for example, and aren't like these industrial titans, like if you're wanting to start a small business, you do need to have a community. You do need to have people to help you. You do need to like know your customers at the beginning. It's just when you get too big for your britches that you start to have amnesia about all the people that helped you.
Yeah. You probably have government loans and stuff as well, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Preferential rates. Oh my gosh. Oh, I could go into a big tangent, but I'm gonna save it because it's already in a vlog footage. So I don't want to repeat it here.
Have you started your own business yourself? Is that where you're coming from? Is this from personal experience when you've...
No. I mean, I have the author business, but no, I'm talking about going to get some French fries the other day and learning about potatoes and where they're farmed and how expensive it is to get the water to irrigate the land to grow those potatoes. Greg might get real touchy about this issue because he's in Montana and it's like right next door to the area where I'm talking about. So we're just gonna leave that alone because
I can't see the messages. I can only see them as you bring them up. So I don't know if do you sometimes juggle the messages or do you try and do them in order?
I'm skipping over the hi and hellos to each other. So I'm trying to remember when someone comes in to say hello to them, but otherwise I'm just trying to go logically here. Did we do this one? There was always a push for right by the trade unions from the beginning, but that owed more to traditional radicalism. And I'm not sure what you mean by a push for right. Push for rights for the workers?
You're right. It'll be rights.
Oh, okay.
Push for rights by the trade unions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to a lesser degree, the utopian socialism of Robert Owen, who is 1770s, yes. And he had some strange, what he went off and did after his experiment. Yeah. Which socialists since Marx have claimed wasn't actually socialism because it wasn't scientific. Robert Owen strikes me as pretty scientific in his methods, but interesting.
Yeah. And socialists are always arguing with each other.
Oh, wow. There's a take. Okay. Aaron says, as far as I can tell, the only people in the U.S. who believed in paternalism were in the South during the antebellum period, and they were the planters. Yeah. So paternalism meaning, oh, well, we look after our slaves because, well, there's the metaphor for the bigger system. Like, your lord.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be a paternalist tradition of what in Britain was called Tory socialism in the U.S. Okay, interesting. Yeah, that's a cross-cutting cleavage that I'm not familiar with, so I'd be interested to hear more about that. William says, William Jennings Bryan, fascinating character, very left-wing economically, but a Christian social conservative. Yes, well, I did say he was a Midwestern folk hero, so yes, there you go. Peterloo, Luddism. Let's see, what else do we have? I have Marx here. Does Marx say how best to satisfy values and expectations in different sectors? I don't know if you spent any time on this question.
I did. Yeah, you gave me the question and then you put entrepreneurs in brackets because I didn't fully understand what you were saying about farmers and factories and things. And I would say that from what I understand it, Marx would have seen an entrepreneur as somebody who's becoming a capitalist. So if you like any self-made man, they're not self-made men. They are men that have been made rich by somebody else doing the work for them from an idea they had. So their idea is self-made, but often they've got a team of people or a factory of people or whatever bunch of people doing lots of labor. and they're the one, and then they're getting rich on it. So that's how Marx would see it. That getting rich, certainly getting rich quick, definitely, but even not even getting rich quick, but just being a self-made man, that's capitalism, which he wouldn't have agreed with.
So you're using a very modern example. I was trying to translate Weaver to a modern equivalent. So when I'm thinking about values and expectations, maybe we have to rewind a little bit. So like different working class, middle class, upper class, there are different values and expectations for those classes in terms of like, well, maybe the working class values education because they want a better life for their kids, and the upper class values tradition and land and not working, and there's their values because that's how they expect to pass on their traditions. So you've got differing like motivations and needs and wants, right? So what he's saying is he's talking about a system where it doesn't work because there's no way to resolve the fact that these different sectors are in competition. How do you mediate those competing forces? So the weavers, for example, were small businesses. The weavers did the work themselves. They maybe had a wife and kids who did like the thread and the, whatever small jobs, but they were their own little house with a loom.
Yeah, and they had no power. I mean, that's the thing that obviously Marx was trying to write a lot about the underclass or the lower classes having power rather than just doing a good job. So
do you mean power in terms of like a voice in the legislature?
Yeah, a voice in the legislature, and some kind of payoff for the work they did. Their labor would in the capitalist system would reward somebody else rather than reward themselves.
Well, okay, so here's an example that I was studying before the reform vote came in that was really highly contested, the Corn Laws and the repeal of the Corn Laws. Some people wanted it because they were paying too high for their food, so they couldn't afford bread. And some people who were farmers, who were like just getting by, like I said, small business, like they're also poor and they're just not getting by because the prices for wheat are depressed. So they weren't getting a lot of money for their product. So we have two groups of people who need a higher price for wheat and a lower price for wheat. Like, what is the thing in between that's going to mediate those expectations? Is it a state mechanism? Is it voting where you agree to have a social program for whatever reason, like for the farmers or for the
if you're asking what Marx would think, I imagine he would suggest that it would need to be a state decision made by these two parts of society that had a voice in the state decisions.
Yeah.
The idea that the people, because he'd say, I'll try and paraphrase the words he'd use, like the people who would create the means of production would have ownership of that and power because of that,
And yeah, so what I'm thinking is that they both need a voice and then they need to negotiate between themselves. So
if there was like, say, I don't know, that there was some system, it wouldn't be the House of Commons because obviously it developed in a different way. But if it was something like the House of Commons, then you'd have both sides arguing about what price should be for wheat so they can figure it out and then make a law about it. So then they can move forward. And then both parties have got some sort of benefit from it. I think that's the principle behind it.
And then how long would it last? The 4 years of whatever until the next election? Perhaps. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leslie is here to say hello. And Greg says Idaho has its famous potatoes, but it's only possible to grow those potatoes because of irrigation, which is part of my story. Exactly. Because of the dams. Okay. So I've got a couple more. Did you have any questions you wanted to throw into the mix of like what really something that made you laugh or like think of something more recent when you saw parallels or anything like that came up when you're reviewing?
No, but when I looked at it again, I did think I would have liked to have had more about the Toll Pole Martyrs. They're kind of mentioned. They're mentioned about 5 times and really briefly. And it's such an interesting part of that period that I'm surprised he didn't go into more detail on it. But
yeah,
I mean, he does touch on so many things that this is silly to criticize it. But yeah, the Toll Pole Martyrs story is quite amazing, I think.
Okay, so I don't know if I sent you this one. How much of class consciousness has to do with pride in what you are at birth? For example, pride in the class you're born into.
I think that's like a modern development, I think. So in those days, it would have been just an awareness of the community, and it wouldn't have been associated with pride in the same way. Although if you had somebody particularly angry or motivated to start riots or to start a petition or something, then they might have had more pride in their class. But I think that kind of thing has developed over time. So as agitation has developed, you've had people hark back to sort of some of the people from this time and earlier and quote them and see them as heroes, and they've attached that to pride in their own sense of we're going to do the same, and that kind of banner waving stuff, I think has sort of got bigger over time because it's kind of
that's interesting. So I think it might be a personal view thing, because I feel like maybe this is the American, maybe that's why, because when I think of pride in the class, I can look at models from history, like people who were working class in Victorian era being very proud of the job they did and proud of their trade and proud of being, in the forefront of industry. I can also see middle class being very proud of being, the ones who are innovating and their children are going to school and they're creating new opportunities. And the upper class being very proud to hold the side up, as it were, to use an expression that no one would understand in America. But like that they are continuing their tradition.
Yeah, I think in those days, I wouldn't have put the word pride to it. I think they would have been. I don't know. The working class would have been proud of the work they did and the labour, and the fact that they were keeping their family. If it was the men were keeping their family going, and the women were building a family, and and the kids were proud of their parents or whatever. That kind of that it would have been localized like that. I don't think they would have been proud of the class. The middle class would have been probably a little bit more entitled. So I don't know if the pride would have been as much as well, I've earned this, so this isn't a pride thing. This is just this is fact of life, And the upper class, again, pride seems like a funny thing to give the upper class, because again they'd be too arrogant to be proud. I think they'd be like, I'm here because I should be, It's not pride, because I think pride comes from having achieved something or earned something. And I think the upper class wouldn't have felt like they'd achieved anything. They would have been like, no, I deserve this because
does it change when you use the adjective word, when you say proud? Because I think that can definitely be applied to different people in like Victorian age, for example.
Maybe. I just think that it's different now because there's so much. The upper class, there's still an upper class. They would be faced with questions of, do you deserve your inherited wealth all the time now? Because there's an ongoing conversation that's very public and very, they wouldn't be able to go on the internet without finding something like that, But in those days, they wouldn't be given those questions all the time. They went to the wrong neighborhood. They've come across some poor people and go, oh, that's disgusting, But they'd have this life that'd be completely separate,
right?
And I think that would make them avoid the old idea of whether or not they were proud in that sense. Do you know what I mean? They just lived the life they thought they deserved because of their family.
I think we're talking about the same thing maybe, but using different words. So they would have assumed that inherently they were worthy of this privilege.
And I don't know if that's true as much now. I think there probably are still some people who think that, but I think a lot of inherited families that are in the aristocracy over here probably give a lot of money away and start trusts and start charities, and they do that kind of thing because they probably wouldn't be able to deal with the guilt of just getting given money, a lot of money.
That was my point. So I feel like there's more pride and sort of this is the proper way of life in historical context from my vantage point than there is now, where we're all dealing with things and I think we feel more shame.
I was almost about to say less shame in it probably.
Or it's my bad ancestors who got me here. Like on every level, I think there's like shame about where you ended up, which is weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird though, because someone who's in that position wouldn't say, therefore the system's wrong. They would just go, therefore I'm going to give a lot of money away, and that would make it justified. So they do, they put money into charity or whatever, but they wouldn't necessarily. I don't know if they do think. I don't know. Maybe there are some people who build hospitals and stuff. I'm not sure. Maybe Aaron can tell me if there's any any rich people. Yeah. I mean those kind of things would change society, but I don't know if it's like piecemeal stuff that the rich people do just to alleviate the guilt, or if there's stuff that's like actually that's impressive. I do think the Prince's Trust does quite a lot. I don't know what it's called now because he's the king, isn't he? But when for many decades he was a prince, and the Prince's Trust did do various different things. And I know that to be fair on him, I don't like being fair on him, but to be fair on him, that trust has done a lot of work for ordinary people. So that sort of thing can happen, but I don't know how to qualify it. I don't know how much does it alleviate the guilt that they should feel.
Well, and there's also people who are breaking, what's it called? Breaking ranks is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
There's a woman whose family was like a plantation owner in the Caribbean, and she not only renounced it, but I think had started to like do reparations and institute something. I can't remember her name, but she was being questioned about it, and obviously she'd had to go through this like, okay, am I going to do this? This is the revolution in my thinking. This is the revolution in my branding of like how my family acts in public. It's like a whole thing, right? You're not just you. You're all your ancestors' accumulations.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a political conversation with someone about systems and like isms, and then someone says, "Yeah, but if you got lots of money, you're not going to give it away, are you?" And it is nice. There are historical examples of people that have done that, and it's like, well, actually, you don't need to be a millionaire. You can give away money and still live very comfortably. So there are people who have done that. It's just nice that exists.
That's an interesting question, since I think 2015 is when the headline first came up about like the bill that paid slave owners reparations for emancipation. It was just paid back. Like there was that whole like revolving loan situation that's sort of weird to understand for Britain, but I understand like it was paid back in 2015. And like I see the headlines starting sort of from that time period about is it UCL, University College London, that does the archive of all the people who made money off of slaves and that bill, and how like they've got the receipts. Like, oh my god, how much is that like talked about or debated or like in the discourse at all? No, just for us research nerds.
It would have been done for a while from some people, but it's got to be said that most people don't even think about that.
Really?
And if you pick the average person, they'd say, "Well, it's nothing to do with me. Why are we giving away money for something that happened 200 years ago?" And they don't get it. And obviously we went around the world. It is weird when you think about, we are a small country, and we it's so weird what we did. Like we went around the whole country, whole world, going, right, you guys, you're gonna do what I say from now on, and then this is our language, and this is our religion. It's so weird. But we did do that, and the consequences are huge. And when people complain about people like governments giving aid to countries that need it, most of the time they're countries that we've screwed up, or certainly had a part of their history. And the people don't get that. They don't see that actually we have had a part in their history, so we are partly responsible, besides the fact it's the right thing to do anyway. But if you're going to look at it from a moral point of view, then there are consequences to what we did as this bizarre country that went around the world bossing people around.
Interesting. All right, so Aaron's talking about the repeal of the Corn Laws in 1846 was the Conservatives under Peel. Peel was surprisingly amenable, I'll say, to some of the left's issues, which is interesting in what I've been reading. It led to a split with Peel and his supporters leaving and eventually forming the Liberals with the Whigs. Aaron's got it down. All right. Peel
He knows his history.
The Peelites was William Do you say Gladstone?
Gladstone.
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 Gladstone. Okay.
Gladstone. Yeah, Gladstone. Scone or scone.
Yeah, there's some funny words like I think they're mostly place names, but I crossed the street that looked like Fenwick today and I went, is that Fenwick or is it Fenwick? I'm betting the Americans will say Fenwick, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but you've got Arkansas, which is the most bizarre thing ever.
Yeah. I have no idea how that came about. I mean, it could be backwards, right? You think Kansas and Arkansas, they look the same, they're pronounced differently. Is it because one is more correctly from a Native American word?
Yeah, maybe.
It was just chopped off? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. But my first wedding was in Flitwick, which is spelled Flitwick.
Oh, how do you say it again?
Flitwick.
Okay. It's fun. Oh, and I did want to say,
can I ask Aaron if he's actually got a some kind of qualification in history, or if he's just he reads it for fun because he knows his stuff, doesn't he?
Did he? I can't remember what he said at the beginning, but yeah, sure. We'll ask him again if
yeah.
If
he's still around.
When you were talking about giving aid to other countries and the relationship of the empire and the colony and post-colonial history and future, that's a great opportunity for me to say, yes, we have a British person living in Rwanda who is our guest tomorrow. So if you want to tune in 10 a.m. Pacific time, which is going to be 6 p.m. British summer time, if you're still in British summertime, we're going to have Margaret from Writer in Rwanda on, and it's a premiere because she has huge thunder and lightning storms that like short out the electricity. But we'll be in the chat answering questions and such, and we're talking about a book called Emergency Sex. So it's fascinating look at international development and that sort of relationship of like privilege and doing good and like, are we doing good? So very good discussion.
Yeah, that sounded like a really interesting book. When you talked about it.
Don't employee-owned businesses kind of address this issue of inequality in capitalism? So like bridging the gap. I think this is back when we were talking about how do you have different sectors negotiate to have a voice. And I think employee-owned businesses are a great model because then it's the individual company that's its own democracy.
Yeah, but it's within a system that's flawed. So it's only a small... It's a small...
Right, it's an island. It's a floating island, if you will. And you'll float on.
You know, I remember one of my... I'll never forget, I got this really funny reaction from my teacher when I wrote an A-level essay about... what's his name? Palmerston, Lord Palmerston.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was famous for creating this idea of splendid isolation, he called it. So being an isolationist, basically. And we had to write an essay about whether or not we thought it was effective or not, like judging from the facts, you know, that we'd studied in the lessons. And I wrote this massive long diatribe about how it doesn't matter what one country does, the whole world needs to be in the same system and sort themselves out so that it's equal, and it's not going to work unless, you know, so there's a massive thing. She was like, very interesting read, Gareth.
New World Order.
I was like this at 16. I was like, it's not going to work, you know.
That's brilliant.
That was proper Trotsky.
Nice. There's always been a long tradition of aristocratic philanthropy in Britain building hospitals. Foundling Hospital, that's one of the ones I'm basing a place off in my book. Libraries, yes! Someone mentioned on TikTok or Instagram, like, could you imagine trying to fight to get libraries today if we didn't already have them? And I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad we already have them.
Yeah. No, he's talking about, because that idea of them building hospitals and stuff like that, but I don't know the specific examples, but I knew it happened, and like Aaron's saying there, it's a big thing. So
supporting social reforms like Lord Shaftesbury. I don't think I know about that one, so I'm gonna store that and store that away to see if I can find out more. That repayment wasn't just the payments to the planters, but the loans taken out to pay for the 60 years of the Royal Navy's anti-slavery West Africa Squadron. Okay, so the not pirates. What did you call them? Something tiers. Something. What were they called? Privateers.
Privateers.
Yeah, guarding again. Yeah, something tiers. I'm like It's not musketeers.
It's not musketeers.
William says I had a long back and forth conversation.
Crocodile tears.
Oh no, with a Gemini AI chatbot about how we need a new way of thinking about capitalism. Part of it involves giving away most of your wealth upon retirement. Interesting.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So what did AI think? I love this idea. It's having a political discussion with a robot.
Yeah. So Aaron says, I've always had an interest in history, and I also did media and politics at university. Okay, so there's the background. Started when he was little with Thomas the Tank Engine. He got into the history of the railways, and
that's so cool.
Oh my goodness, that's gold.
That is so good. So he's talking about Thomas the Tank Engine. I'm talking about Blake Seven. I love it.
William says the other part of my idea involves capping wealth because there's only so much you can do with your wealth, like buying homes and not using it. The use it or lose it principle. There you go.
It does my head in that if you talk about capping wealth as somebody who believes in not getting in the way of someone making a lot of money, they're like, yeah, but they earned it, and they don't. It's like, can we just like concentrate on the point that you don't need that money? You can't do anything with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like you can. The capping could be that after a certain amount, you're supposed to, you need to do certain things with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you can live very comfortably well before some of the quantities that people, like we were saying, not actually a large proportion of the population, but enough of the population, it would dramatically transform people's lives if there were those kind of rules in place. And it wouldn't matter to the people that are having their money used in different ways. It would not matter to them at all, not in reality, in the practical. It would matter to them in principle and their emotions, but it wouldn't matter as an actual physical change in their life. So I agree.
About like, what if the top 10 richest, or maybe it was it past a certain point, or was it top 10 richest? Like they get beheaded. Well, then no one will want to be the richest, and no one will want to be above that line. So they'll just keep giving away the top point. So I mean,
so that's a bit more dystopian, but yeah. So that's like
more Squid Game.
Yeah. You put them in a Running Man kind of situation, and you can hunt the rich.
Running Man, is that a movie?
Yeah. It's like...
I just know the dance move. So,
they can do that dance.
Yeah, the idea about giving away money when you retire would not work in the U.S. because you have to have so much money for living in retirement and healthcare, because healthcare is expensive, and because you live longer than you are calculating for the retirement. So you'd have to have a social safety net, is what I'm saying. So it depends on which system you're putting it with.
So are you ever going to have some sort of national health service then? Like that common sense thing.
Yeah.
You're ever gonna have
it. Yours is getting tanked at the moment, isn't it?
Well, it's weird because it's being sold out from like when people can't see it happening. So there's areas of like wings of hospitals and like different elements of the system as a whole being bought by Richard Branson and Virgin.
Privatized.
And that's a really serious thing.
Yeah.
It never gets talked about. Nobody knows it except those people that just find out. But most people don't know it. And if they did know it, because it's the one thing that I'd say like 90% of British people would be proud of and go on about what makes the country brilliant. They would be so upset if they knew that was happening, but it never gets talked about. So yeah, it is a bit dodgy. And the Tories would never be able to successfully put in a manifesto that they want to privatise the NHS. They would never be able to do that. The Reform Party wouldn't be able to do that, and they're being supported by a bunch of nutcases. But even that party wouldn't say it. Do you know what I mean? The NHS is something really sacred to us.
Yeah. No, I think that's what people mean when they say the quiet part out loud, because like it's whispered in back rooms by people who don't give a shit about the receivers of care through the NHS, right? They couldn't care less if it's privatized and sold off. They have other ways to get taken care of. But when you're not afraid to say it out loud, you've kicked the bucket, if you will.
Yeah. And obviously we're not unique. There's tons and tons of countries that have got a national health service, that they've got free healthcare. It's ours, but every other country that's got that would also be pleased and proud that they've got theirs as well. It's just common sense. Put some money in the pool. Anyone that needs healthcare gets it.
Yeah.
It's just I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. It just goes over my head.
correction, the West Africa Squadron weren't privateers; they were Royal Navy. Okay, and it cost more taking for inflation than Britain's involvement in the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars together.
I don't know the West Africa Squadron at all, so
I don't either. Okay, so Shaftesbury and West African Squadron. I gotta look those up. We can cap wealth, and you can still afford to eat caviar for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Depending on whose wealth you cap, you may not be able to afford to eat caviar because caviar may not exist. Depending on when you do it. And when I say giving away most of your wealth, I mean billionaires giving it away 90% of all they own to not only charitable causes like food, but constructive things like schools and hospitals.
Yeah. So it's not just giving it away, but and then they can choose what to do with it, but it's doing something that's socially aware and not just living off it.
Right, social causes. Alien says U.S. is the only industrialized nation without universal healthcare. I know.
Yeah, there's tons of them. Yeah. It's really weird, but again, it's that idea, isn't it? That it's all about keeping the money that you've earned, and not someone else getting some healthcare that you paid for.
Yeah, I'm still shocked. I'm still surprised every time I hear of a state, because it's about states' rights and deciding based on their own microculture whether they want to like make their own system, and they don't want to be part of the bigger system because it's more strangers. It's more of a like insular feeling, I think, of like, well, I know the people around me live well and live right, but I don't know about those crazy liberals on the coast. Like denying healthcare, it's wild. I wonder if we could do like a comparison between healthcare dollars and like FEMA emergency dollars, because what's interesting now is seeing all the people who did not want to give aid to emergency tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, what have you, and then it comes to their town and they're like, wait, we need like are the wheels turning? Like everyone needs this. It's so
and just to kind of look at my own personal point of view as far as paying for someone else's healthcare, I've been pretty lucky in my life. So I'm 54 and I've only been in hospital twice. Once when I was 18 and once 4 years ago, right? And I've been pretty healthy. Now, which is that weird thing when it did happen 4 years ago, it completely freaked me out.
Right.
And I felt pretty immortal before it happened. Now I feel quite mortal. But the point is that meant most of my life I've been paying for somebody else's healthcare. So I haven't needed tablets. I haven't needed to go to the doctor. I've been to the doctor, I don't know, about 30 times in my life. That's not very much for 54 years. Right. And a lot, most of that would have been as a kid. But I think that's the only way to live. I'm not thinking, well, I've just paid for someone else's healthcare. I just think that makes absolute sense. And then when I did go in hospital, I was there for however many days, and they did all those sorts of tests, and I had all that medicine, and I came home with a whole bag full of tablets I was supposed to take, and I had these visits and blah 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 blah. None of it cost any money. None of it. Yeah. Not even the taxi fare from the ambulance. I don't know if you have to pay for the ambulance to pick you up, but I don't know. But none of it.
Don't know. You haven't heard the horror stories of people getting Ubers?
No, that's great. That's insane.
They can't afford an ambulance.
Yeah, no, nothing costs. They'll only come down and say, "Do you want a cup of tea?" They'll make you a cup of tea. They're not going to go, "Well, that'll be £2, please."
Yeah,
everything's free.
They do things like $16 for an Advil because you're in the hospital, and that's what we charge in the hospital for an Advil. It's
completely mad.
Capitalism.
Yeah, it's just like profiting off someone who's trapped. They're captive audience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Captive. We thought of the same word, and that's another thing I want to follow up with. That's a great thought to like ponder on.
So weird.
Atlanta celebs who make 50 million plus for one movie did not earn it. I agree.
Yeah. And that sort of stuff. These people that do that, they're probably justified by saying, "Oh well, I don't know when my next job's going to be," or blah 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 blah. But that's still an insane amount of money that they don't need.
Yeah,
it's like you're not really thinking about the numbers here. You're just you're rationalizing it.
Right. You're falling prey to the insecurity trap that capitalism wants you to stay in.
Yeah,
and because it could always go south.
Yeah, and to go back to Marx, Marx would have been horrified by the extent and the extremes that we're now at, where someone can get that kind of money for working for 2 weeks on some film. You know, it's not, that is not paying for labor. That's money making money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Capital making capital. This has been a fascinating discussion, but we're over the hour mark, and I do have to keep them mostly to the hour, I realize, on my free plan. If there's not any final questions, I was going to ask if there was any one person that was profiled in the book that like you really liked and dug. I know I've read about Francis Place and other places. You mentioned Henry Hunt. There's Hobbit is mentioned several times, and I want to look into him more. He sounds fascinating. Bit weird, but fascinating.
Yeah, you know, he is interesting. I did a lot of Hobbit on in the A level. Well, Thomas Paine's mentioned a few times in here, and I'm a big fan of him. So yeah. Are we actually wrapping up?
Yes.
Wow. Shall I try and talk? The scary bit hasn't even happened.
What scary bit? Go ahead.
So what was your actual question? Hold on. And I was like, Oh yeah, the second question: do you have working definitions that make clear the difference between middle and working class?
You sort of sidestepped that, so I was just going to keep.
Oh, so you thought you'd be nice? That's a really lovely thing to do.
Huh.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. So I made a ton of notes. Let's look at the comments, and then I'll try and give a general response to that because I think it's quite important.
Okay. William says there's a dystopian novel called Jennifer Government where a character had to pay for an ambulance with a credit card. And that I feel is not dystopian at all. That's real America. Aaron says the main issue with the NHS isn't the principle. It's that it was founded with a centralized structure, which has meant the service has suffered a crisis roughly once a decade since the 60s. So the centralization of the management is what Aaron has an issue with because it leads to weaknesses, he says. Greg says, thank you for the conversation. In the immortal words of Mary Elizabeth Lease, raise less corn and more hell. Oh, I love that. That's another person I have to look up. Thank you. I knew you would be awesome. Okay, so final thoughts on the definition debate.
Okay, yeah. So this could be another 2 hours. So I'm going to try and do it quickly. But ultimately, this period is a lot easier to define the working class in this period.
Yes.
Now it's been muddied like crazy. So there's several different ways. There's income. So what income you have, but then that's confusing. The amount of power you have, so how much agency you have to change laws. Because anyone in the working class have probably not got any ability to actually create law. The culture, so working class culture is a big thing.
Yeah.
And
do you call it supper or dinner or tea, right? Where you are. That's one of the things.
Well, and what are you eating?
Right.
Are you eating bangs and mash, or are you eating some posh thing that tastes like ridiculous food?
Poached salmon.
Yeah. Are you drinking wine or are you drinking the beer? You know.
Yeah. Cultures
and language. You know. How you speak. You know, like and not just your accent, but the words you use. You know. Like if you're not going to get some posh person say, "All right, mush," yeah, mush is like a local word for mate.
Okay.
Yeah? But I've done that with my students before. I've said ego mush, and then they've like, ooh. But you know, if you're posh, you wouldn't say mush. You'd say, you know, I don't know. There you are, sir. I don't know. I don't know how posh people talk, but do you know what I mean? The language is different. The lifestyle as well. So you could summarize working class life certainly in most of the last century, and now as pub life. Yeah, working for the weekend, going out to the pub every night if you're that kind of guy, but certainly on the weekends if you want to see your wife, and that whole pub life thing is you know that's a working class thing, you know. And it's not to say that middle class people don't do it, which is why the middle class and the working class thing is confusing. But I don't think you see it. You don't very often see the upper class in a pub. They would probably find some exclusive bar somewhere that you have to have a certain income to go in there, and you'd have to, you know, probably
the club. I mean, the club was for upper class, right?
Yeah. Retina scan to get you in. You know, so and there are some places in London. I went to. I went out. I was when I just a friend of mine bought me a ticket to see Springsteen, and we were in London because it was in Arsenal, the Arsenal Stadium where he played, and he was like, "Oh, let's have a drink, Gareth." I said, "Okay," because we had time before the show, and he said, "Well, you know that I run my own company, and you know you want to know this club that I go in a lot, and let's go and drink in there. And I was like, all right, thinking, what are you talking about? And it was like so exclusionary. Is it exclusive?
Exclusive.
It was ridiculous, and it was like the whole atmosphere was like really like these small pockets of people sitting in this darkened room, and like the drinks were crazy expensive, and it was just really weird. I just thought, this is how the other half live, and that whole phrase, how the other half live, is part of that lifestyle and that culture. So I think that's an important thing, and where you go to school as well. So obviously there's two, you know, I really strongly believe there shouldn't be private schools. So we call them public schools over here, but your term for that is private schools. I don't think you should pay for your education. I think it should be a system, a state system, because I don't know if this is a bit of a tangent, but cut a long story short, if some politician is having a wonderful time, or their son's having a wonderful time in their school, then they're going to be less motivated to change the laws for education if you're getting a shit time in the state schools.
That everyone has access.
Yeah. So I do think that's a thing. But you know, where you go to school is a big part of that as well. And I was going to talk about you know, football is middle class as well, but it's such a massive part of working class culture, huge part of working class culture. And like some sports, like some other sports like darts, is a real working class thing. They're playing in pubs. And talking about music, punk was a working class movement. And if you look at prog rock, the musicians of prog rock were middle class, but actually there's a lot of working class fans of prog rock, which is kind of interesting. So shopping, you know,
what about yacht rock, Gareth?
Yacht rock. Are you a particular fan of yacht rock?
No, I just have a friend who likes using that phrase when he's talking about stuff. He says yacht rock. I think he likes it, but like,
I think that's like AOR, isn't it? And like Rumours era Fleetwood Mac and that kind of thing. I think
it feels like he's
I call that. I when I talk to my students about that, I talk about the influence of prog rock on chart rock and call it soft rock. So bands like Kansas and Toto and ELO that kind of progified their simple songs and made them more complicated. I'll talk about that, and I think that's often kind of seen as yacht rock, that kind of thing, I think. But yeah, people who grew up on the benefit system as well. So I grew up on benefits. My dad disappeared when I was 6, and I know I would have a very different life if he just stayed around, because he was in the Navy. He was an officer in the Navy, so I would have had more of a. He would have pushed me to be as like in the services, but instead, you know, we had a handout. No, exactly. I've turned into a very different person, which I feel like saying thankfully, but I don't know if you're not, you wouldn't know, would you? But you know, I had handouts from the government, and I had really crappy sandwiches for lunch and ill-fitting clothes, you know, from the handouts that, you know, you could get school uniform paid for by the government if you're on benefits and all that sort of stuff. And then, so I think that gives you a certain perspective and a certain experience. And I then became a teacher after working in retail for a long time, and now my kids tell me that they had a more comfortable childhood because I was a teacher. But there's loads of working class people and tradesmen and builders and plumbers that earn a lot more than me, double what I earn, and they would be working class because they're laborers. But that's the weird thing about the money side of it, that you can actually be more wealthy as a working class person, you know, because just, you know, it's weird. The middle class wages sometimes just stay there, because some middle class professions you're getting paid by the state, so the government will tell you what you're getting paid. And teachers haven't had a pay rise that's been in line with inflation for ages. Whereas obviously you've got more agency as a labourer, you can charge whatever you want. So
as long as everyone does the same.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Oh, okay. Well, I think that was pretty good. You did the modern version and gave us working class and upper class and a lot of different aspects, and then the sort of like soft definition of in between and how it's changing. So I think that was brilliant.
Cool.
Well done. Yeah.
No one wants to go in here and look like an idiot, do they? So
no.
But this is a great book, isn't it?
Yeah. 1963, yes, classic.
How old is it?
English working class. And we've got homework now because I've got to look up Lord Shaftesbury and the West African Squadron and Lease, who someone mentioned. So I've got 3 things on my list, but I always come across things like this and then it becomes homework and delightful new research nerdery. So
and you put it into your books, which is brilliant.
Other
Yeah,
people,
so it's over 900 pages.
Yeah. There you go. Fun. So thank you, Gareth, for coming on and wanting to talk about some like political economy. I know that's not everyone's bag, but I think it's really important. So I really enjoy that.
It's always better with the stories, isn't it? The people, the things that happen. You know, like if you just looked at statistics, it would be incredibly boring. But there this is full of people trying to change the world.
Yeah, exactly, and make it better. So, yeah. Thank you, Gareth, and thank you everyone for being here and listening in and asking great questions and dropping in your knowledge. I do appreciate it, and thank you. So take care, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. if you're in for emergency sex. Otherwise, every day in August. Yeah. So thanks, everyone, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. Bye.